player will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. This is the Trials of Mana Vision Card Thoughts. It's a brand new Vision card introduced this week. You do have to pull on it in order to build it, but I figured walk through some of my considerations, whether or not it's right for your account. Is it a must pull? Is it not? But before we get into any of that, let's look at the card itself. So this is a card that covers 4 different classes. It's for Book, Axe, Sword, Knight, and Staff Black Mage. It is a physical-oriented card in that it's got a major 142 attack stat here. It does also give 20% defense pen for the bestowed ability, which really would only apply to a physical-oriented unit. In terms of the party, again, the 60% attack as the main stat there, so more physical-oriented, but it does also come with a 24% chain resistance, which is certainly nice, but the 20% physical AoE wide resistance is really the big one to look for here, where 20% for physical wide res is the highest percent you can get on a vision card at the moment. There is still some debate, though. Is this truly a main slot vision card, though? And the answer is yes. In the modern state of the game, it's not a slam dunk. The water has definitely been muddied because of how they've introduced AoE res penetration into the game, most notably with Cloud and Sephiroth, but even units as of late, like Duran, do have something as little as 20% AoE res pen. So this is something that is being introduced more and more into the game so that as more AoE res penetration gets introduced, the flat AoE resistance vision cards get slightly worse. They're still great and they still should be in your main slot, but they become worse enough that they're competitive with this type of vision card. The downside of this, though, is regular old AoE resistance applies to both physical and magic types. So even though it might be less, it applies to both. This one, it only applies to physical. So if you're going against a magic team like Gilgamesh with that nice large diamond, this gets virtually no value against Gilgamesh in terms of the AoE wide resistance. So that's one of those things in the game where they've kind of added some randomness to it in terms of how you can gear. But regardless, the overall conclusion is that yes, this is a candidate for a main slot vision card, and it's got a Guild War hollow effect that's extra incentive to use for this. And we've seen pretty frequently most of these vision cards with a 60% attack or magic stat on them tend to be one of the main drivers of some potential future meta changes. But the little wrinkle in here is that out of the 4 different classes, only 2 of them are physical oriented. So it's really Axe and Sword Knight. So while these stats like the chain res and the physical wide res and some of the defense are certainly nice for party members that are Staff Black Mage or Book, this card isn't really meant for them. So when I'm looking at this vision card, I'm really looking at it through the vein of Sword Knight primarily and Axe. And some of the difficulty right now with Sword Knight is that Ashen King Mont, while still an exceptionally strong unit, is having a really tough time in the game because of how strong Wind is with Shreka in particular. And the rest of the Sword Knight units are a little bit outdated, power crept, a little underwhelming. Characters like King Bradley and Squall, a Winged Stern, who certainly all are quality units, certainly aren't top of the charts for how competitive they are anymore, which makes evaluating this card a little bit difficult. But there is another physical wide resistance option, particularly for Sword Knight, that the Fey Princess of Ovis has 2 out of the 3 attributes on it. It's physical wide resistance and chain resistance. This one is more of a, defensive oriented card though, because it has the debuff weakening rather than a primary stat, and it does link up some different jobs here, where this is for Sword Red Mage and Staff Devout. So it's 2 different potential synergies that they're attempting to build out here. And so the big difference too is this is a magic oriented card, that it's got primarily a magic stat on it. So there is some alternative for Sword Knight when it comes to physical AoE wide resistance. I'll be honest though, I think this card is likely better than the Fey Princess of Ovis card. This is still a great card. Most cards are in their own right, but the other one definitely seems to have more bang for your buck, and that it covers more jobs, and it seems to have more impact that we can measure, as opposed to debuff weakening, which is still really strong, still really good, but maybe a little harder for a regular player to kind of think through. But when I think more again about Sword Knight in particular, it does bolster the links to Staff Black Mage and Book, which they've gotten 2 in a row here of the Summer Getaway vision card for Staff Black Mage and Book. And I'm sorry, let me pause to explain this chart on the right, what you're seeing here. All of these cards on the left side here are the Sword Knight vision cards. The X's that you see in the green are whether or not they share that vision card with one of these three jobs that are on the Trials of Mana vision card, or the Duran vision card, as we might otherwise call it. And so Axe already has a small handful of cards in common, and Staff Black Mage and Book most recently had Summer Getaway, and in the future, for the unknown future of this, the Saddle Vision card is going to add Book again to Sword Knight. So there is some synergy there with Book, that 3 in a row here. These are all 3 primary slot vision card potentials. Summer Resnick obviously comes to mind if you've been using that unit. For Axe, really right now, the only strong unit for me is the Veritas of the Flame. The other Axe units are, again, kind of losing their foothold. That being said, though, one of the things about vision cards is that they tend to get better as they age. A lot of these cards do still have usages and times and places months and years after you may have pulled them. So while today Axe might not look very strong, all it takes next month is an amazing Axe unit to drop, and it completely changes the value of this card. And the same thing for Sword Knight, where right now we're really kind of keeping our vision limited to Ashen King Mont and to Duran. Specifically, I think those two are the most compelling units to look at. But in the future, we could get another Sword Knight tomorrow. That would completely change the outlook of that. So the other major consideration, which I didn't even talk about on the last slide, is the 15% curse resistance that comes on here. And so I want to talk through some of the percentage chances just to give you an idea of how this helps. It doesn't solve things, though, which is why it's still a really nice thing to see, but not a major consideration. If we look at the top here, this 67% chance, this is versus Sephiroth. He's the highest percentage proc chance in the game. Assuming you're having this card on a physical-oriented character, I'm going to assume their faith is at 50 for the sake of this. And so I have 2 lines here. One of them is if you had no vision card, just a Truststone passive, and then with the vision card and the Truststone passive. And so right now, if you're using a Sword Knight unit and you're not using this vision card, if Sephiroth limit breaks, and the Sephiroth we're going to assume is 97 faith, you're getting hit 62% of the time by the curse. So more than a coin flip. If you have this vision card on your Sword Knight unit, that percent chance drops to 40. So now you're on the minority side of the coin flip. Is that a major difference? It can be. Obviously, you're going from more likely to happen to less likely to happen. Now, 40% chance isn't 0% chance, but again, from a coin flip perspective, the fact that you're now in the minority of instances actually does mean something. To me, that's a breakpoint that I often look for a lot, where if you fight 10 Guild War battles, you're now going to get cursed 4 out of 10 instead of 6 out of 10. Is 4 out of 10 amazing? Still not great. Still didn't feel great, but it's better. I can't deny that. That being said, though, there are units other than Sephiroth, like Ramada, the new Pierce unit, and Veritas of the Frost, who might get some use here in the future, that also have Curse in their kits. So obviously Sephiroth is one factor, but even a regular 50% chance proc rate like Ramada and Ice Veritas, right now, without this vision card, you're at 37% chance to get cursed versus one of those two. And this card would drop you down to 15%, which is very small to me, in my opinion. I would assume you're not getting cursed most of the time if you're attacked by Ramada or Ice Veritas. But those are very niche units, hard to justify. Do you pull a Hollow Vision card for 2 very niche units, one of them that's not even really being played right now? But that's why you don't want to think short term about this. For all you know, in the future, there could be another unit that comes out with a 50% curse chance, and you might be missing out on this vision card because it's limited. Now, for Duran specifically, because again, Duran is one of the 2 key units today that I'm really thinking about this card most optimally on. He does have 10% innate curse resistance. So right now, without the vision card, you're looking at a 47% chance, so still about half. But if you have this vision card on Duran, you drop him down to 1 out of 4. It's a pretty significant difference, in my opinion, going from half the time to a fourth of the time for Duran specifically. So this card, again, is really tailor-made from, obviously, with the defense stats on it too, the defense pen, which he does not have a lot of access to. And so the long story short, should you pull the answers? Maybe. I obviously still lean toward yes in most of these limited cards because you really don't know if they're ever going to run again. There's a lot of people in the game that would have loved to pull the Sorrow Fire Vision card. There's a lot of characters that would have loved to pull the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood Vision card. These things that don't rerun very often, when they're gone, you'll likely miss them in the future because you just don't know what's going to come 6 months to a year from now. And so to me, in the short term, although it might seem a little bit limited, I would still ask the question, is Sword Knight a major class you've invested in? Is Duran a unit you're looking to build as the free unit if you have your pick of the Trials of Mana collaboration? And do you have Summer Resnick? Because as a book unit there, we're getting 3 back-to-back-to-back vision card synergies. And Summer Resnick is an S-tier unit that's still going to play for the foreseeable future that you want to put her with some of these Sword Knight units potentially, Duran, Ashenmont, whoever it may be. This is a much higher incentive for you to pull if you've already gotten Summer Resnick and her Vision card, where this synergy of Sword Knight and Book is right down the middle, getting a lot of love as of late. And Summer Resnick is as good as she's going to be right now as well. But that's my thoughts overall. Again, kind of a tough decision to make. It's one you might have to think a little bit more about your account. In the short term, doesn't seem like there might be a ton of high impact because the pool of characters you're using it on is a little bit smaller than what you'd like to see. But as the game evolves here, this is one of those Vision cards I could absolutely see being a big player down the line. But that's my thoughts for now. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to you all later.